Hello, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. So now, can I get a mover and seconder for an approval of the agenda with the amendum? Moved by Councillor Stephen, seconded by Councillor Tozo. All in favor? All in favor? That passes. All right, so now the confirmation of the minutes from the committee meeting number 0224 held on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Can I get a mover and a seconder with the addendum? Moved by Councillor Amos, seconded by Councillor Shaves. All in favor? And that passes. So are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Amos?
I, Don Amos, Councillor for the City of Kingston, hereby declare an indirect pecuniary interest with respect to Clause C, Little Forest Pilot Project, because the Seniors Association, which I am an employee of, is in partnership with Little Forest Kingston to develop in the development of the Portsmouth Little Forest Project.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing as none, so now we will move to delegations. So our first delegation is Ron Hartling. He will present to speak to the committee regarding the air quality in Kingston.
So, great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you on air quality. I'll jump right in, if this works. The fundamental problem is that Kingstonians' annual exposure to airborne fine particulate matter, known as PM 2.5, typically exceeds the WHO's evidence-based recommended maximum. Yet most of us remain under the illusion that we enjoy excellent air quality. Recent studies have shown that illness and mortality rates rapidly increase as soon as those levels exceed the WHO limit. On the one hand, there's absolutely nothing that Kingstonians can do to reduce ambient PM 2.5 levels because, except during wildfire season, virtually all of Kingston's airborne particulates come from far away. On the other hand, we can simply and affordably keep our personal and family exposures well below the WHO limit by being aware of the risks and taking suitable precautions. With lives and health spans at stake, I would argue that fostering the necessary awareness should be a moral imperative for the city and for our health unit. The WHO average annual exposure limit is 5 micrograms per cubic meter of ambient air, and no more than 3 days in the year exceeding 15 micrograms. Kingston's annual exposure for 2023 was 8.7 micrograms, and we had 33 days which exceeded 15 micrograms. While last year was clearly the worst so far, these two 5-year charts prove that exceeding those limits has become the norm rather than the exception. Kingston actually exceeded the WHO limit in 42 of the past 51 months. The consequences of exceeding the WHO limit are truly severe, including rapid increase in general mortality, especially stroke and ischemic heart disease, as well as more moderate increases in mortality from COPD, respiratory infections, and lung cancer. Counterintuitively, recent studies have shown that the most rapid increases in disease outcomes occur at relatively lower exposures, below the dangerously outdated Canadian and official US standards of 12 micrograms. The good news is that better protecting yourself and your family isn't all that hard. Simple, inexpensive measures include wearing N95 masks outdoors whenever hourly readings exceed your personal threshold, Mine happens to be 15 micrograms. Closing all windows when the readings are forecast to exceed your household threshold. I use 12 micrograms for that. Relatively affordable measures include deciding on your personal maximum acceptable PM 2.5 level and buying one or more portable HEPA filters to keep it there. Choose a filter with a built-in PM 2.5 gauge available for under $200. Replacing your furnace filter with one rated at MERV 13 after first checking that your furnace fan is rated for that level of airflow resistance. And if you don't have central air conditioning, running your furnace fan whenever windows are closed in hot weather. A further but relatively expensive measure would be to install a heat pump along with MERV 13 filtration for year-round comfort. In terms of effectiveness, had I applied those inexpensive, affordable measures for all of 2023, my annual personal exposure would have been around under 3 micrograms compared to 8.7 for Kingston's ambient air. Improved public awareness would clearly save lives and improve health spans.
You have
Therefore,
30 seconds.
respectively urge this committee to direct that staff review the evidence behind these findings and develop an appropriate plan for council approval. I'd be happy to walk the staff through the analysis and jumpstart their review with 10 years of official data. And last slide. This particular, oops, sorry. God.
Sorry, that's
I'm
been
not sure
5
if I can
minutes.
get back there.
Thank you. So now, do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you for that presentation. I'm allowed 2 questions, and I have 2 questions. First one, so in your discussion here, you talked about fine particulate matter, which I think you called PM 2.5.
Yes.
Okay, that's not my question. My wonder is, so when we're talking about Ontario's official air quality index, there's a number of factors that are measured and considered. So why are you focused here on the fine particulate matter?
Excellent question. There's 6 different pollutants that make up the Ontario official index. The fine particulate matter, the PM 2.5, happens to be the deadliest of those in terms of health impacts. But it's also the one which we can actually control our exposure to, which means that awareness, would make a difference. You can have unhealthy ambient air, but you can still keep yourself and your family safe relatively easily.
Thank you. My second question, through you, Mr. Chair, where or how can people find the fine particulate matter measurements for either the community or their home?
Well, my last slide, which I didn't get to, was actually proposing that this committee direct staff to look into these numbers. And I'm happy to work with them and give them a jump start with a view to having an official site that provides the necessary information to take precautions and basically protect yourself. What I've done at KingstonAirQuality.ca is a proof of concept site. It took me a month, relatively one-person month to create, and I update it daily for 30 minutes. It takes 30 minutes in the morning to keep, so it's not a resource-intensive thing, but it gives people everything they would need to know. And I believe there should be something official as opposed to, a random website from a person like me.
Any other questions? Councillor Shaves.
Thank you. Would you be able to share your slide presentation with the clerks to share with the committee members?
Sure. I would.
Thank you.
In terms of staff who are looking into it, I'd share the whole elaborate spreadsheet that generates all of this information. But the slide deck is certainly available, I think, if the clerk, through the clerk's office.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I can circulate the presentation to the members of the committee and any interested members of council.
Thank you. Councillor Amos.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Mr. Hartley. What you're referencing is, it sounds a little bit like public health as opposed to city council. Can you just elaborate why you're bringing it to us and not to public health?
Because it's a serious risk that will cost lives and cost health spans of Kingstonians. I'm not convinced. I have a lot of respect for public health. I had huge amounts of it when they saved, hundreds and thousands of Kingston lives by some of the initial steps that they take. But public health has become quite politicized, and the official Canadian standard is basically just following the US standard, which is highly political in that the EPA has tried to increase it based on current research to be closer to the WHO. But in today's climate, that's just not going to happen politically. So I'm worried that the health unit may feel constrained to follow Ontario government standards, which is probably stick with the business-friendly 12, and whereas council would be more open, I think more free to look at the evidence and do what makes sense for Kingstonians. And by the way, Kingston is not the worst Kingston's among the best in Ontario, but it's still far worse than, it's still unhealthy.
Okay, Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Hartling. One of the things you brought up, and I just was hoping you could elaborate on, is that air particulates, the air comes from a lot of different areas due to air currents. Just kind of a different segue from Councillor Amos's comment, isn't this more of a national and provincial issue as well? Because this is a broader area of regulatory framework, right? Like if fires are on, forests are on fires in Quebec, you don't really control that here. So wouldn't it be also worthwhile to discuss this on a broader national level as well? Because that's really where air quality standards need to be set.
Mm-hmm. It would be, but it's probably not happening if you look at how well our national government has dealt with the rental housing crisis and other things. Everything has been too little, too late. And just by there's no real dollar investment needed, just by making Kingstonians aware that there's a problem and giving them some simple guidelines how they can choose how much to expose themselves and their family would be a big step forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing as none, thank you very much. So now I'd like to invite Joyce Hoyston, who will present to the committee regarding Little Forest's pilot program report. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm here speaking in gratitude and thanks for this report and support of it. Imagine it's 2030, we have 3,300 tree equity here in Kingston, a biodiverse city in a forest. Oops. Every child can see at least 3 trees from their window. This is my dream. They can walk or wheel to school protected by a canopy of at least 30% on every street. This is not Kingston-wide, but every street. And experience the magic of a relationship with a nearby green space within 300 meters, that means. So our method, I'm not going to go into our method, we use the Miyawaki method that was started in Japan 40 years ago. He saw what, after the tsunami, the buildings that survived or did the best were around temples that were protected by native forests, that were biodiverse, multi-layer. And so that's a method that has spread around the world. We did our first 3 in 2021, and you can see some of the cities now that have really sprung up and groups across them that are doing them. I'm not going to list them all, but you can see there's quite a few, and those are just in Canada. And the ones at the bottom are ones that Little Forest have actually been supporting with some of our advice. So, Tree Selection Guide just came out. This is a fabulous new book. I love books. And they're from 2 botanic gardens over, one in Sweden, one in the UK. And this book is really how do we think differently about the forests in our city. And with the twin climate and biodiversity crisis, along with new research on how trees grow in community, we need to transform our approach to the urban forest. And this is a sketch from the book, and you can see they call it a pocket woodland in the book. 5 years, 15 years, 25 years. So this is one of his highly recommended ways of planting now in urban areas. We have been really working hard on what we call our forest builder. You can't see it. It's a really big spreadsheet, and the Forest Wrangler note has been working on it, including things like, and I think we have air quality in there, so interesting the previous speaker around that, because different trees can capture different particulate matter, but we've got climate and carbon storage and other things, and we're factoring all of this into our selections. Now, we're doing pocket forests. So we've done some little forests, the bigger little forests, but to really get a forest in a city, we need everybody to be planting forests on their private land. And so this is our model, just tiny little pocket forests. Same idea, multi-layer, biodiverse, but 6 trees, 12 trees, 50 trees potentially, depending on the site. All different types, as you can see. The one on the left, this is one that we planted in the fall. So we just planted a few last year. We were originally going to plant in the grass, but it turns out that's invasive European buckthorn and multiflora rose. So that got cut down, and now there's 45 trees and shrubs in that patch, and they will be cutting down the other buckthorn they have there. This is just a hedgerow along between a park. This is in Reno Heights. Very barren front yard, 401 exposure. That's going to be this is the potential to give privacy, air filtration, noise reduction. This is in Cataraqui Woods. This is the potential about what we might be doing there. This is in Lawrence Park, and they really suffer from lack of shade, southwest, so they need cooling of the house. So there'll be a little pocket forest going in there. This is actually very close to me. We met this person at CD Saturday, and they've already recruited 5 people within 2 blocks where they're going to plant pocket forests, and they're also going to green their ditches, doing pocket prairies in their ditches. So really fabulous. Where I think we need to go each year, that more and more that it becomes mycelial and it spreads. And if we're kind of thinking about it as gift economy, and one of the gifts that they can do is recruit other people and really promote this idea. And you see those this is from Making Nature City, a science-based framework that was done in the States, to say you don't have to read all of this stuff.
30
We've done all
seconds.
this research for you. But if people can see the connection to the greater city and the greater watershed, and how their little pocket forest will help the different creatures, like the bees, the birds and things, be able to move through our city, it'll be like, this is where we'll get to a biodiverse city in a forest. This is my yard on the left, 15 years later on the right. You can make a big difference in 15 years.
Thank you.
We must, as the elders say, reconcile with the earth.
Okay, do we have any questions from the committee? Councilor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a couple of quick questions. How much does a typical pocket forest cost, and what's the typical square footage for a pocket forest? Just so that the general public can understand what they'd be looking at.
And I don't know if there's quite a typical answer to that, but the trees that we'll be buying will range between, some will be plugs like we're doing in the little forest, some will be 1-gallon pots. The biggest will probably be a 2-gallon pot. So the price per tree and shrub will range, it'll probably be averaging $5 or $6. seriously. And so unless it's a food forest, which has some more expensive trees and shrubs, then 5 times, like, let's say it's 9, so $50, $60. Really not a lot. And most people can easily fit 6 to 9 because it's multi-layered, like 3 or 4 levels, tree, understory, shrub, which brings the most cooling, the most biodiversity, the most air cleaning, most support for our pollinators. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing as none, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next. Nathan Nesdoli will present and speak to the committee regarding Little Forest Pilot Program report.
Good evening, Chair Sinani, community members, city staff, and guests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm here tonight to encourage the committee and council to support the Little Forest Pilot Project. If the city allows underused turf areas and parks to be converted to Miyawaki-inspired forests, it will generate significant value through the thoughtful engagement of residents. In order to increase the tree canopy of the city, we need to, as Joyce mentioned, maximize the help, support, and cooperation of all landowners in the city and all land users. Most citizens of Kingston, in my experience, are aware of the benefits of trees in helping to mitigate the twin biodiversity and climate crises knocking on our door, but some people just don't know where to start. We have acres and acres of turf grass in the city, much of it underused, that could be tree canopy. Most on private land, but much also on public land. As the city supports the planting of Miyawaki-inspired little forests on this public land, it supports public education and skill development. The city becomes an example to its citizens. I've been involved in the planting of the Portsmouth Little Forest project at the Kingston Senior Center for a year and a half. Last fall, we planted more than 1,600 trees of 81 different species in 3 different little forests on the city land west of the Senior Center. What have been the spin-off values? As a result of the community engagement done by Little Forest Kingston and the Senior Center in the year leading up to the project, we have an ongoing volunteer list of more than 70 people, as well as 150 others who showed up to help us with planting. The project generated the donation of $20,000 of equivalent minimum wage labor. At least 5 new volunteers with the project have signed up to plant pocket forests in their own yards. Many more have been introduced to the Miyawaki method and to the concept of rewilding. Little Forests Kingston volunteers have presented 2 information sessions at the Senior Center to dozens of people about our work there. We have had countless conversations with curious onlookers, many leading to new volunteers and new support. Our funding agency for this project, Green Communities Canada, has touted our model of community engagement as a gold standard. At the Senior Center, we informed all neighbors in the vicinity with flyers. We had 3 sessions introducing participants to the Miyawaki method and engaging them in imaginative exercises emphasizing nature-centered design, and then 1 session scheduling soil preparation. In March, I presented to the Green Communities Canada monthly community of practice session to 20 other groups planting little forests across Canada. It was clear from the reaction of the participants and the coordinators that Little Forest Kingston was viewed as a leader, not only because of our history of planting since 2020, but also because of the scope of our community engagement and cooperation. We work with the city, Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, Loving Spoonful, the Seniors Association, the Neighborhood Climate Action Champions, the Thousand Islands Master Gardeners, and many other groups. Our reputation is leading to new funding opportunities through Green Communities Canada and through other mission-driven organizations who admire our principles. The city can take advantage of this funding by providing planting sites. Even though the Senior Center is uniquely placed to be able to engage community members, the same is true in other areas of the city and with the cooperation of other community organizations. Little Forest Kingston has been working with residents of public housing for more than a year and will be planting 3 little forests on Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation land this October. The residents that have turned out to participate in these projects are passionate about greenery and biodiversity. In fact, there is broad public interest in planting trees in many neighborhoods. People seem eager to engage in community groups while working on concrete neighborhood projects. Citizens are aware of the need to biodiversify their properties and need help and encouragement to do it. Council can play a key role in mobilizing public interest, education, and most importantly, capacity building by opening up underused city lands to citizen-driven development.
30 seconds.
The best way to achieve our biodiversity and climate goals is through such development, which, most importantly, has at its heart the building of a more cooperative and resilient community. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing as none, thank you very much. So now there are no briefings, so we will move on to business. So we'll move on to the recycling transition update, cart-based waste collection. Can I get a staff introduction, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Following the council meeting in September 2023, public engagement took place to review with residents their thoughts, comments, and concerns regarding cart-based collection. The engagement took place in 3 different phases, the first phase being an open online question answer with over 200 participants, the second one being in-person open houses with 80 participants, and the third one being an online survey, which was developed based on the comments from the prior 2 types of engagement with 1,800 participants. The information was gathered and used to generate the options that are here. The summary of our findings include a preference for weekly garbage collection. Cart size preferences were the smallest carts, being 120 liters if it was weekly garbage and 240 liters if it was biweekly garbage. There was an interest in purchasing volume in place of bag tag program. And there was an interest in the city developing a bulk garbage and bulk waste collection program. And there was also interest in the city looking at additional diversion opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Shaves.
Thank you. Within the report, it mentions about the possibility of adjusting the solid waste by law. So it's mandatory to have organic carts set out with the garbage collection. I'm just wondering what the reasoning behind this was, because many residents may not have enough organic in order to be put out every week.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That was meant to be an example of some of the types of things we could look at. It is a program where putting out the organics container would result in more people using that program. Currently, we're about 40% usage on that program. It's fairly low. So it really is to encourage more people to use the program. It would be something that we would bring back in a presentation or in a council report after having done some community engagement with different options.
Okay, thank you. I'm all for increasing the use of organic bins, but we do have a high population of senior population within Kingston, which generally would have either individual residents or more likely 2 within a household, which wouldn't generate as many, especially for a larger bin of 120 liters. So I look forward to the future recommendations. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Amos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. I noticed in the report under, on page 9, other diversion opportunities, you reference toxic taxi program. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And is there a timeline if we are going to look at that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The Toxic Taxi program was a program developed by the City of Toronto where you actually collect hazardous waste from residents when they're unable to get it to our household hazardous waste depot. That does require a significant amount of work in getting C of A's, designated vehicles that are able to do that. So the timeline would likely be in 3+ years before we could get that program running, if that even becomes a financial option. It is quite expensive to run that program.
Is it anticipated when we switch to the large bins that the routes will either be shorter or the timelines will be longer for the staff to complete? And is there a need for further staffing to accommodate if this will take longer for the staff to collect?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We don't think at this point in time that the routes can't be completed in the 8 hours that are allotted for the work to happen. Based on statistics from other similar municipalities, we don't see an issue with that at all.
The reason I ask, I was in Chatham, Ontario last week, and they have the same program that we're looking at getting. And my observations, the driver, talented, but it is a process. It is definitely slower than our current crew or what they are doing. So I'm just hoping that with efficiencies, time will speed up as well.
Yeah, we have definitely looked at that, and I think we will be well within our timeframes.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Just wondering if you might have said it already and I might have missed it, but I'm wondering when this information was collected, because I noticed there were a lot of people who wanted textile recycling, and we've done that now. So is this that it happened before Renewal Squared joined us here in Kingston for the pilot project, or is it a case of people just not knowing about it?
Yeah, so I think the survey was done in December, January, so it would have been about the same time that that program was starting to roll out. I don't believe we had the bins out at that point in time, or they'd just been delivered. So yeah, it would have been early in the program that most people may not have realized that.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully that's something we've crossed off the list already, maybe. I guess we'll see how the pilot goes. I just wanted to sort of take us a step back for a second, because I think that this is maybe a really interesting opportunity to consider our sort of waste in a broader sense. So when we look at the 120-liter bin that's recommended for weekly pickup, and that's the smallest version that's available, staff are going to look into exemptions if people want a bigger one, or pay-per-use. Is that something you've explored yet, or is that something that's coming later?
Sorry, through you, I believe your question you're asking me is, have we looked at larger bins?
Yes, but also, I mean, in terms of exemptions or paying more, do we have any kind of ballpark or idea, or is that that's information to come later?
So we have looked at that. I guess I'm sorry. We have looked at that. That is something that we will incorporate in. It'll come in another report probably as we move closer to this, in terms of whether we have an exemption if you go to a smaller bin, or you pay additional if you go to a larger bin.
Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. What would be the cost of a $240? Because it says that we might offer it as a cost recovery, if I'm reading the report correctly. What would be that extra cost to an individual? In the report, it says between $100 and $200. Is that about what it would be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. So the cost of the bin itself, I think that would be absorbed by the city. I think the cost that we would be looking at would be the cost of the disposal, additional disposal, and it would be somewhere between $150 and $200 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. In the report is mentioning that the city will not collect the recycle anymore from May 25th. So have we give information or educate the public what they're going to do with their recycles?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, so we have not yet, there's another report coming in here tonight on recycling. That will go out once we have more information on the actual processes, which are just being defined right now. So probably starting in January, we will start doing some communication with residents on that.
The other question is, I speak to a lot of constituents about the garbage collection, the size of the bins. So many of them have a concern, a smaller garbage container versus what we have now. So what they're going to do additional garbage. But now I see in the report saying we have the option to implement weekly instead of bi-weekly. Is that size we are offering the citizen now will collect the same amount of garbage even we going weekly or less or more?
So I think what you're asking me is, will the garbage container that we have now be the same if we're weekly or bi-weekly? So it would be 120 liters if it was weekly. It would be 240 liters if it was bi-weekly.
So are we choosing the option weekly now, or are we still working on weekly or bi-weekly?
So I think the recommendation that we have is that it's weekly and it's 120 liter, the smaller cart, with then either the ability to charge more or an exemption to those using the normal size cart if you're going to the larger cart.
Okay. Do you have a question? I think he can work on the question. So yeah, you'd have to move to waive to do a second round? No. Okay. Did you want to say? No? Yeah? Councilor Rosanek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a few questions. For the green bins, are they going to stay exactly the same as we have today?
So the green bins, through you, Mr. Chair, the green bins will be a little bit larger. The reason for that is that the truck that picks them up puts a fair amount of force on the sides of those bins when they pick them up. And the 120-liter cart is the smallest cart that we can get that has a warranty that comes with it associated with that. There is still some discussion about whether we continue to use the green bins that we currently have until they're broken, or whether we transition everything over to 120 liters.
Okay, thank you. Then I saw some of the comments, if sometimes I use an extra garbage bag, can I still do an extra garbage bag at that time? Is that what's going to come forward later, the details of how that would work? Like we're eliminating bag tags?
Yeah, through you. We would eliminate the bag tag program because we cannot just pick up a bag with the truck. We would look to implement some sort of bulk garbage or bulk waste collection, which you would call then. We'd make arrangements for a separate truck to go around and pick those up on a schedule basis.
Okay, thank you for that. For all the comments that are at the back from the survey, are those comments going to be looked at too? Like not all of them relate to just like the garbage being 120 liters or 240. Are those comments going to be looked at and see how many can be addressed with other things?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, definitely we've started taking a look at those, and we have done some summaries of ones that are similar and ones that are different so that we can take a look at those.
Okay, thank you. And then through you, Mr. Chair, for the textile bins, even though, the textile bins came out right before Christmas and the survey was in January and there might not be awareness, those textile bins, they could take fabric scraps. Like I saw that in a lot of the comments. What do our current textile bins, those green bins, they take fabric scraps, do they?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, they definitely take fabric scraps.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to then the other question is, so I saw the one where it says for these 120-liter garbage bins, we'll have to use clear bags. So I just want to ask about cat litter. Because I have 5 cats, so it's a lot of litter. I don't want to put the litter loose into this garbage bin. I'm fine with 120 liters, that's no problem. So would people with cats, because I know dogs, right, those bags are very small and it's pretty distinct what a dog waste bag is. Can people with cats, can they put it in like, some sort of paper, like some sort of plastic bag and then put that into the clear bag? How are we dealing with people with cats?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There would be essentially the same idea as we had when presenting clear bags as an option. Small personal item bags would be accepted. It's really just we don't want a full black bag in there, so we'll be able to see the contents at a later date.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No. Okay, so now we'll move to public questions. Is there any members from the public who wish to ask questions? Is there anyone online?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm there are no members in the public viewing gallery online.
Okay. Oh, did you have your arm up? Yeah. Yeah, you can come up over here.
Come to the microphone and then just state your name for the minutes.
Just state your name and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Gabriel Alexander March. I'm a part of the 558 Air Cadet Squadron. We're here today to listen upon your presentations and all of that such. I came in a little late, but I did have a few questions. Some of them were for the Little Trees program. I'll have to email them about that later. But for overall waste, are we just looking at actual textile bins and bins overall? Because what about roadside waste? I walk to school and I just see, I walk from John Counter to Elliott up by not the Food Basics, but the Wholesale Club. There is just there's just trash all along it, and all around the little neighborhood in that area too. What is going to happen with that kind of trash areas, or just overall trash? Or what about the homeless population and their trash? If we're looking at trash management, it should be overall, what about stuff that's just getting kicked on the side of the road? I picked up one brisk bottle today, but then I saw everything else because it was directly in I kicked it. I was like, oh, there's too much already everywhere else. It's noticeable and it sucks to see. Also, where's the waste gonna go? And what's gonna happen with it? Or recyclables, are they actually gonna be properly recycled? Also, are the recycling bins going to get bigger? Because when I moved here in Sudbury, we actually downsized in recycling bin, and it's actually been quite the hassle for when we have lots of paper or plastic, that it gets quite a lot. We have 2 recycling bins at this point. Also, if we do bi-weekly for garbage and such, I've had to actually clean out my green bin and sometimes the garbage bin because bugs and the smell get so bad. So what happens if okay, we go bigger, but then we have to wait longer? What happens with in warmer months, or when all the garbage is inside in the colder months? What happens when the smell starts to get really bad, and then there's some other health safety concerns?
Through you, Mr. Chair. You've got lots of questions there, so let me see how many of them.
Was that all your questions?
The rest are for the other, for the.
Okay, you can ask those later when the report comes along. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there anyone else who wanted to ask questions? Seeing as none, okay, you can answer now.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Chair. Garbage in general, we have a number of different programs, so this is one part of a program that we have. We have collection of our garbage waste, of our organics, our recycling, and our solid waste. We have street cans that we collect through our Public Works Department. We have out over 1,000 street cans throughout every summer that we collect from, they're on the street, people are picking them up in public parks and stuff. We have drop-off locations for recycling. We have drop-off locations for organics. So although this is just talking about a small portion of that program, we do have a number of programs that address a whole slew of different issues surrounding solid waste. When you talked about recyclables, come January 2025, the recyclables will be collected through a provincial program. It will no longer be the municipality's responsibility to pick those up or process them. There will be, through Circular Materials Ontario, there will be a program where the producers are required to collect and deal with any of the recyclable materials that they have put out there. That program will take place. So the program that we're talking about right now, the cart-based program, does not address recyclables because by the time we implement it, recyclables will be transferred over to the producer program. When we look at bi-weekly garbage collection, it really is, the goal of that is to get people to use their green bin. Because if you use your green bin for all of your organics, there really is not a whole lot that goes into your garbage that would result in a lot of smell. So your green bin would be picked up every week. Your garbage bin would then just be picked up, your green bin would be picked up every week. Your garbage bin would be picked up every other week. So that you shouldn't have that same smell and bugs sitting in that for the 2 weeks before it's picked up.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move back to the committee for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Amos, seconded by Councillor Shaves. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm sure staff have had these conversations, but I just want to make sure that we address this here tonight as well. This change, like these changes that are coming, so we've got the recycling change coming next summer, and we've got this cart-based waste collection happening. Like, this is a decided shift from the norm, and it just feels like a huge opportunity to try and change behavior, right? So whether it's increasing green bin usage, whether it's, I mean, there are pieces to consider, obviously, with manufacturers and the kind of packaging that people use and whatever. Like, there are a lot of policy pieces here that are out of our control, but I just would really love to see if we can somehow make a real shift in the way people think about waste in our community. So I just wanted to put that out there. Again, I'm sure you care about this too, but I'm hopeful that we can see some changes. There's a Twitter handle, I don't often talk about social media, but it's called YGK One Bag or Less. I'm just looking around the horseshoe. Are people familiar with them? Not really? Okay, so this is a family. It's 2 adults, and it's either 2 or 3 children, I can't remember. But through their choices and waste diversion efforts, they're able to put out, in a year, a single bag of garbage. And you think about, I know in my household, we put out a bag every week. It's not necessarily full, but it goes out every week. So there are choices that we can make, and there are ways in which we can actually reduce our waste. And I really hope that that becomes the focus more so than the size of the bin and that kind of stuff. I think that the overarching picture is really, really important. I'm wondering, so sort of 2 things. First thing is that dumping, as our cadet friend Gabriel, I think, identified, is a problem in our city. I think it's a problem everywhere. And I think that that's part of the reality that we have when it comes to waste. People don't want to pay. There's companies like 1-800-GOT-JUNK, right, that will come and get your stuff for you, but it's not cheap if anyone's used it. It's actually quite expensive to use. So the talk of potentially having a user pay model for picking up bulky items, I think is interesting to explore. I'm curious to see what you come back with. When it comes to actually reducing waste, again, we need sort of carrots and sticks, right? So Toronto, and again, I recognize we are not Toronto, but Toronto does use a user pay, like a fee for service kind of model. And I'm just looking at staff to see, did you take a look at that? I'm just curious what you thought of it if you did take a look at that. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So when you say a user pay system, are you referring to everyone pays for each time they put it out?
Not exactly, and I'm not an expert in this, but I know that they have fees by bin size. So for example, their smallest bin is 75 liters and it charges like $300 a year. medium is what we're talking about as our smallest, and it's $360 a year. So that kind of thing. And again, I recognize that for taxpayers, that would be unpopular, but it's just, I think as leaders, it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I think that's similar to what we're trying to do, is there would be a base fee which everyone gets charged, and that either be for the smaller bin and you pay to use additional, or there be a flat fee on the larger bin and people get a discount for using the smaller bin.
I'm just thinking on that in terms of behavior change. Again, not saying you're wrong, just I think there's something to it here, and I'm curious to hear what you explore later.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. One of the considerations that we have to consider is the illegal dumping. And not just the illegal dumping, but also the behaviors of dumping into existing public garbage cans, because that's an issue now. When you get to more of a user-paced system, that can actually breed more of that. So it can perpetuate that and create a greater problem. So part of the analysis and balance that we have to try to accomplish is how do we incentivize the kind of behaviors that we're looking for from the public to reduce their waste, but at the same token, not having it shift into the illegal or into the public dumping site. So in essence, it's not actually diverting the waste in a way that we'd want to. So that is part of the challenge that we have with this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think Commissioner Doisy just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it, right? Is how do you find that balance and how do you get that behavior change without creating a new problem? So, you know, I don't envy you. This is a really challenging job that you have ahead of you, but I am super interested in what you do come back with, and I hope we can support you in this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rosanek?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to support what Councillor Shave said about if we do that extra step of making it mandatory to use your green bin. In my case, I have 3 backyard composters because I'm kind of like Joyce Hostin, you know, super gardener, and we never use the green bin. And I'm a vegetarian, so we never have any meat products to put in the green bin either. It just might be the odd pizza box, and that's it. So I don't know how that would figure into it, unless maybe we got a special colored sticker to put on our 120-liter waste receptacle. I'm not sure. Like maybe that's an idea if you want to still do that mandatory thing. Thank you.
Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Actually, going through this report, I was just struck by the other question of this, which has been touched upon, is illegal dumping. And this was brought up as well. But I think what would be interesting to see here in a follow-up report, if I could give a suggestion to staff, is give us a bit of section about illegal dumping and about the problems of it and associated with it, and how that fits into the puzzle here. Because I think the first thing I thought of, like when I read that cameras are on the side of it, I'm like, that could help with illegal dumping, because that's a huge problem, I think, in everyone's district, right? Is people just literally throw garbage on the side of the road, or they use public dumpsters. Like I was at the Memorial Center the other day and someone drove up and put a garbage bag full of garbage in a public park. So it's a huge problem. I'm interested to see how this can circle the square with some of that illegal dumping, because I think that's another piece of this puzzle here, is how we can disincentivize people to illegally dump and take their garbage home. Because I get asked for more public garbage cans regularly. Can we get another garbage can here? I'm like, do you want to illegally dump? Is that exactly why you want to do it? And you know, my constituents are like, of course, I would never think of doing that. And I'm like, well, okay, you're living by, Leroy Grant, a huge apartment building. I think you want to. I don't buy that. But I think that piece of this would be very useful for us to read, maybe as like an added information as well. But a very good report. I'm happy to support this. Again, this is exciting. It's a change, and there will be a lot of, I'm sure we'll hear about this in our email inbox as these things get rolling out, pun intended. And I look forward to seeing what comes out from staff. Thank you.
Okay, more discussion? Councillor Hassan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Well, thank you, Councillor Stephen and Toso for bringing this up. I just want to share with you guys that I have a business and I have 2 dumpsters behind my restaurant. And it's not once a week, every single day. People are dumping their garbage in my recycle bin instead of the I don't mind if somebody dump in the garbage, but garbage in the recycle bin, I have to jump in, take it out every single day. Since we are suggesting a one-time fee or equal fee to collect the garbage, there's 2 issues I'm seeing it. Some people in the family, there are 5 people, they have more garbage, and some senior citizen, they are only 2 or 1. It might not be fair with them because they have to pay the same fee, like I am family of 5 and Tozo is family of 3. They might have less garbage than I have, 4, sorry.
From my daughter,
Sorry.
yeah.
Your dog too?
I have a daughter, yeah.
He's poop? She poops?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we probably will create issue with this. It's a good system. I'm in the support of it, and I appreciate the report and the starting the program. It will take time. It's good as we seeing it, but also we see a lot of problem, like Councillor Stephen mentioned that we probably force the people to increase more illegal dumping, either beside the road or other people's dump something. While we are looking into this program, how to implement and see the consequences or the string attached to it to not having more problem. We are trying to solve the problem. I think we should start looking into this before we implement the program, how we can prevent all those side issues, illegal dumping on the roads, like a cadet said, and it's no doubt that we see the garbage everywhere on the roads. People driving and just, they said, no one is coming, take the garbage bag on and just drove away. And I've seen that so many times on the Bath Road by the federal property on that. And I am worried about this is the 2 issues of the price for the people who have less garbage, and the price will probably affect illegal dumping. This will bring more illegal dumping on the roads or the public properties or other people's dumping. So please start looking into that issue right now. So how we can have tough measures to caught those intruders, catch them, find them, or if I see them, I want to with them, by law with me and throw that person in my dumpster, ask him to take that garbage out by yourself instead of me. I'm too short to jump in, but I use ladder sometimes. I swear to God, it's too high. And I use the stair to jump in to get out. People think that I'm a can collector. I'm collecting the can. But thank you very much for this nice report. I just want to bring to your attention while we start talking.
Okay, so I'll call it to a vote now. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. All right. So now we'll move on to the next order of business, which is item B, no mo may. So can I get staff to introduce?
No mo may.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong report. Through you, Mr. Chair. In February 2003, Council approved a motion which asked staff to report back in Q1 of 2024 to identify municipally owned lands that the city could leave unmowed for the month of May. We considered a number of factors when we looked at this. We looked at historical review of the calls that we received from residents on grass maintenance in parks and roadways to understand the concerns that we've had addressed to us. We looked at where we're mowing is required to maintain a line of sight for the roadways, and we looked at concerns about ticks and longer grass as it relates to people and pets. With this in mind, the following areas we determined that we could leave unmowed for the month of May. Small spotches of naturalized land along the edges of some of the following parks: Dunham Park, Garden Walk Park, Meadowbrook Park, Oak Street Park, Rawdon Park, and Woodland Park. That we would leave the area surrounding the 48 city-managed stormwater ponds unmowed for the month of May, and that we would leave roadside mowing for the month of May in our rural routes. with the caveat that if for some reason there is a lot of growth during May, there may be areas that we do have to mow that one strip along that in order to maintain proper sight lines for people. We will look to sign urban areas, notifying that we aren't cutting specific areas for the reason of no mow May. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I put this motion forward last year. Thank you for the great report. I did not know I would start a culture war in Kingston, but here we are, just based on some of the feedback I got. So I do, regardless of, I have no emotional attachment to things. Policies are policies. Some of the questions I do have is based on invasive species. I did get some reports that last year there was increased invasive species in areas that were unmowed. Do you have any evidence to support that? Because I didn't notice that in the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are starting to track where some of our invasive species are. I believe there's a report coming in 2026 on some initiatives around invasive species. We have been sending a number of our staff to workshops, and we've been trying to track that. We haven't got that totally tracked yet, but it is definitely something that is on our radar and that we are working on currently.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Any other questions? Councillor Amos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just a comment. I'm fully in support of this, but it's an observation that as we move in this direction, are we setting up some of our other species, as in our birds, who like to nest in the ground? Is there potential here for another catastrophe in that area? So I know that you talked about our ponds that we have set up, and generally a lot of our birds in the area will gravitate to that area, and then once the lawn starts going up 4, 5, 6, 7 inches, they potentially see that as a nesting ground. Are our crews available, or not available, sorry, are our crews aware of this in when they go in on June 1st or the first week of June to now bring these areas back to regular lawn length?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what a great question. I wish I had an answer for you right now. That will be something that we will need to look into. Some of the storm ponds currently are left natural all year. We do get a lot of calls to keep them cut, but we will need to take a look at those areas and determine if there is issues with nesting birds on them.
And then just a follow-up, I know we're talking a lot of roughly 6, 7 parks you had listed there. One of them is in my district, but we're talking 40, 48 ponds that you were referencing. Is there signage, or is the comms team going to be putting out a communication out to the public, letting them know this is on purpose?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, definitely we will look to sign all of our urban areas, and we will do some communications through our comms team.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Rosanek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think Councillor Amos raises a great point that I never thought of about the stormwater ponds. My question was going to be about Dunham Park, only because we have so much wild parsnip in there, and we get complaints from people if the wild parsnip, actually gets to the seeding stage, and then people want pesticides put on it. And the problem with Dunham Park is there's the creek, and then that turns into our drinking water when it goes to Lake Ontario, and I definitely don't want to drink any of that poison. So in Dunham Park, where was going to be that natural no-mow May? Was it going to be around the creek or just like in a grass area?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It really was meant to be left sort of along the fence lines of those houses, leaving a swath, like 1 10-foot swath along those, not necessarily along the creek, but just back out of the park area, but just something to maintain some distance between the house and the park. If it's anywhere where it's getting close to where we would have kids normally playing and stuff, there's a lot of area there that sort of sits back. We would look at doing it back in that back area. We wouldn't look at doing a consistent one all the way through because we wouldn't be able to do that and still maintain our areas that we need to make sure we're keeping people safe.
Okay, that sounds a lot better, thank you. And then we're still going to be mowing like around the creek areas to try to cut down the wild parsnips so that we don't have to spray in July and August.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, we would continue to do the mowing that we're currently doing.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, any other questions? Making sure, okay. So now we'll move on to the public portion. So if there's any members of the public who wish to ask questions, you would have 5 minutes and you need to say your name. Is anyone, do you wish? Okay. All right, you can come over here and you have 5 minutes. Just state your name again for the record.
Hello again. I'm Gabriel Alexander Marsh, part of the 58 Air Cadet Squadron, joining you here today to listen in on all of the talks and such. I just had a few questions about, since we're talking about like parks and everything, and like water and like mowing and such, what about Bell Park? I kind of live near it. I've been curious on what's going to happen with it overall, as it's not had the best time over the last 4 years, to put it lightly. It's honest. And when I went there last, it was honestly quite nice. But then COVID and everything hit, and I would honestly like to see something similar be done, maybe with other parks. But like, it's quite a big and well-known park, but now it's just kind of nobody visits it anymore. Also, I think it's Parsnip because since you were all talking about it, but is Parsnip the one that causes like it's like the one that gets really tall and it causes blindness and such? Okay, that was one of my concerns because there is a lot of like just flat areas and they do like to just show up when there isn't any trees blocking the light, which can get bad. Yeah. And I forget who was mentioning the animals. I think it was, I can't read the name from here. I think it was that gentleman over there who you mentioned the animals, correct? I don't think it's just like the birds we have to worry about. There's also moles, especially snakes, and especially by watery areas. They just love to hide in the reeds and such. And if we just destroy their home, it's not really gonna be good for the ecosystem. That is all I have.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else wish to ask questions? Is there anyone online who wishes to ask questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no members online.
Okay, staff can answer.
Thank you for your questions. Thank you for all being here tonight. It's great to see a group of young people here to listen. In terms of the wild parsnip, yeah, that is the yellow plant that you often see growing. We do try and maintain that around walkways, around parks, either by cutting or in some circumstances that we spray if it is close to walkways where it creates a danger. Definitely if people have concerns with that in areas that you're walking that are public places, let us know and we'll see what we can do to maintain those for you. And again, great questions and comments on the mowing around the storm ponds. We will definitely take a look at that.
Okay, thank you. So now, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Tozo, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Any discussion? Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just wanted to double check something that I think was in the original motion but wasn't mentioned in this report is with respect to promotion of the event. Are comms still going to be promoting this year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, we will continue to do what we had done last year as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing as none, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. Okay, so now we will move on to item number C. And can I get the staff to give an introduction?
Yep, so Little Forests. Little Forest is a unique planting method that has multiple layers of planting that mimics a natural forest. Little Forest Kingston has become very recognized for their tremendous efforts they've had over the past 3 years, planting over 5,000 trees in 2021. Since 2021, staff and Little Forest have developed a very good working relationship as we hope to strengthen going forward. Little Forest has planted a number of traditional little forests, including one on city property at the senior center. The city provided the land for the planting and will continue to support the Little Forest there with signages and a bench recognizing Little Forest's efforts. Staff will look to incorporate into the community garden and development and operations policy a section which applies to non-food producing forests, which will be managed by Public Works. This procedure will ensure we have all the appropriate requirements and approvals from various cities' departments and address any specific legal or insurance requirements. Staff will continue to work with Little Forest Kingston to review potential areas for additional projects on public lands. Understanding that public lands is limited and that Little Forest has been very successful in getting plantings onto private lands, staff will work with Little Forest Kingston in support of the smaller version, their pocket forests. As our neighborhood tree program is seeing fewer people using it over the last year and a half, we will use some of the funds which go into that neighborhood tree program to help support them plant 50 pocket forests in the urban area within the city of Kingston. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now this is just an information report, just a reminder. We won't be voting, so. Okay, so is there questions from the committee? Seeing as none, do you have a question? Councillor Osanek?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. So, or maybe I should just ask Ms. Hostin directly. Since we want to try to promote these little forests on private land, like who would someone contact if they were interested? Like if someone was listening to this and is like, I want a little pocket in my backyard, like who would they contact?
Yeah, so we're just working with Little Forest Kingston now. They will go through Little Forest Kingston in order to do that. So Little Forest Kingston will be doing some publicity on that, and we will do some communication on that around our neighborhood tree program sales in the fall as well.
Okay, make sure nobody else has questions. All right. So we'll move on to the public questions. You'll have 5 minutes. You need to state your name. Is there anyone who wishes to ask questions from the public? Any questions? Is there anybody online?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are no members online.
Okay, so thank you very much, and that concludes this item. So now we'll move on to the next item, item D, Blue Box Transition Update, which is also an information report.
Thank you. As of July 30th, 2025, the collection and processing of Blue Box materials for Kingston will transition from municipal responsibility to the extended producer responsibility model, which is organized by Circular Materials Ontario. Toronto and Ottawa transitioned in 2023 with few reports of issues with operations continuing uninterrupted. There will be a transition period between now and January 2026 when all municipalities have transitioned. We would expect to see things may look a little bit different in January 2006 than they do during the transition period. Recycling collection will cease by the city in July 2025. The city's fleet of 6 recycling trucks will become redundant and will be repurposed or sold. City's contracts for collection of recyclables in the east, west, and north will be terminated as per the termination clause of the current contract. Recycling collection of eligible sources. The good thing is that with the transition will mean that the entire province is collecting the same recyclable material. So I think you've all probably heard from different people that different areas collect different things. That will change. However, this eligible sources will result in some changes in terms of who can get collection. There won't be any changes for residential customers, but there may be changes for commercial and industrial customers. Further information and options will be presented to council once the committee, once the city is informed on the contractor that they'll be using in this area for collection and processing. Because that hasn't been determined yet, we can't start any discussions with anyone to determine what that might look like or what we could move forward with. Processing, again, after January 30th, 2025, we'll no longer be using the processing facility. As you're aware, we did try to lease that facility, but we didn't have anyone that met the terms of the agreement. The city will look to review the options for this property following that time. Drop-off of recycling materials. The drop-off of recycling materials operated at Lappin's Lane will be evaluated to determine if this is a service the city wants to continue to offer. It isn't a requirement under the province's new program. We can take a deeper look at this once we know who those contractors are that will be used for collection and for processing. Household hazardous waste depot will continue to operate in 2024 and 2025 from April until November, as it currently does. Will most likely continue in future of that. The location of the facility may need to move depending on what happens with that property. And we're currently still working through some transition issues with household hazardous waste that transitioned a few years ago, but the funding for that has not totally been worked out yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you to staff for providing this update. As you just mentioned in your little intro there, municipal recycling is different in different places at this time, and the idea is this will standardize it across the province. So my question is, do you know if this will be the same kind of recycling that we do here in Kingston now, or will it be better, she said with her fingers crossed, or potentially worse?
Through you, Mr. Chair. From the list that the province of Ontario has indicated, there will be a number of additional materials added to the program. One of the big ones is the stand-up pouches that you would get frozen fruit in. It is identified as a material that does need to be collected. You may see items like styrofoam potentially removed from that program, but there seems to be a little bit of discussion occurring on certain materials right now because styrofoam is not a very desirable material in general. But it should essentially expand the program a small amount, but it should generally stay very similar.
Thank you. That's good news. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Shaves?
Sorry, I have actually just thought of one. I received a few complaints about people coming from different areas and complaining about why we have to wash out our recyclables. Will that still need to be done? Are you aware?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We don't technically require anybody to wash their recycling right now. We suggest rinsing it. We just don't need excessive amounts of food in those containers. There was an old, probably about 10, 15 years ago, where we require cleaning, but we're no longer at that point. They're still going to want a relatively clean product once they transition to a full EPR program, so that rinsing will still be a requirement.
So to confirm, we will be the same as everyone else. Well, you did say that, but yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Amos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. In regards to the termination clause in the contract and the $275,000 that we'll be paying out, you indicated that in the report that that E360 Solutions does 3 areas of our city. So is that 275,000 times 3, or is it a one-time fee?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a one-time fee.
Okay. The 6 trucks that we have, Will they be sold to municipalities, or can they be retrofitted and used in our current fleet in any other way?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the trucks that we currently have, the majority of them are up for renewal now or shortly, and we are trying to limp them through to the end of this program. There may be one or two trucks that would be usable. We would see whether we could use those internally in our solid waste or our public works group first, and then if not able to use them there, we would look to see if they could be sold to another municipality.
Okay, sounds like they're near end of life then. Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? No? Councillor Osanik?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So with this, like next year, when this comes into effect, people will still have the same gray box and blue box. And do we know, would it still be like alternating weeks?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So until December 31st, 2025, the program would remain the same as it is currently. Following that in 2026, that may change once all of the communities have transitioned, but we have not been confirmed whether that will change yet or not.
Thank you. And then at that time in 2026, we could go to even a blue box cart.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a potential, but again, that would be up to the providers to determine whether that is. It would be a conversation that we would have with the contractors when they came in to let them know that we were transitioning our garbage and our organics over to carts, so at least they have a heads up on that. I really do see that, you know, in the next 10 years, most places will probably transition to automated carts. And I'm guessing on the number of 10 years, but we'll transition to automated carts. It is the way that the industry is going.
Thank you. And my last question is just about hazardous waste depot. So I'm so happy that at least we still have that up until 2026. Is the reason why it's not open all year, is it because it's not heated? Is that why?
Through you, Mr. Chair. It is partly because it's not heated. The other issue is the access to the site during the snow. Forklifts we have are not rated for outdoor use, especially in the snow, so we would be unable to move a lot of that material as it is right now. The site would need to be significantly redesigned with a significant investment to open it year-round.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so now we'll move on to the public portion. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to ask questions? Yeah, okay, come on back up. You got 5 minutes and state your name again for the record.
Hello again. I am Gabriel Alexander Marsh. I'm here on behalf of the 58 Air Cadet Squadron. We are here to listen to you and the committee today. We are very grateful for it. I do have a few questions about, well, new questions about the waste program. It's about, well, there's two separate topics. No, I'll start with the first one, which is a bit bigger. School waste. My school has two big, like standard, like giant bins, understandably, because it's a high school, but we don't exactly have a green bin. We also, like, defining, I don't even really know what the recycling bin is, and how much garbage we're outputting is much more different comparatively to a house with a family, or just like two roommates chilling in an apartment. I understandably there's like maybe a separate program, but schools do also have separate needs and also have maybe even higher needs to comparatively a household because of how much garbage they output due to like maybe the hundreds of kids that are in the building. Along with chem labs, like chemistry labs with their hazardous materials, some things are not just simple wash downs or say like there's an accident, like something may need to happen. The other question is, what about private neighborhoods? Because I live in one, and we have our own separate snow plowing. I don't know really about garbage, but I know there is a difference on what happens within that neighborhood. Will there be something happening to private neighborhoods, along with the whole municipality, or is it just gonna it's just gonna be dealt with the private? That is all.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishes to speak? Do we have anyone online?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can confirm we have no one online.
Thank you. Yeah, you may answer the
Thank
questions.
Thank you, and through you, I'll answer a couple of those, and then I'll pass it on to Adam to answer some as well. In terms of the private neighborhoods, they have the option to opt into municipal garbage collection. And if they do, then we do pick that garbage up for them. If they don't, then it is done by a contractor in that area, so it would be left to their contractor that they've hired. I will let you talk about schools, and then we'll see if there's...
Through you, Mr. Chair. School waste is a really interesting topic. In Kingston, all schools are eligible for the green bin program, but it is an opt-in service. So many schools find that they do not want to have the burden of operating that green bin program, specifically in collecting it from specific locations and then setting it out in the reasonable time frame for us to then collect it. There are a number of small elementary schools that are on the program, and a couple of the high schools have tested the program but have not had any luck with it. So we do offer the program, it's just not a very popular one. In terms of chemistry labs, all of those chemistry labs will have a hazardous waste disposal company come in and collect those wastes. That is outside of a municipal perspective. We're only dealing with household hazardous wastes. When we start talking about industrial materials, Queens, any high school will all have their own company come in and do that. As for recycling, recycling is part of the new recycling program that's going to be under the province. So even though the city of Kingston is not currently offering recycling service to schools, the new program will offer that. And it would just be up to the schools to also partake and participate in those programs. And that is coming from either a school board or a school level itself. The municipality does not have a lot of option to get in there and have any interaction with them.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to item E, tree canopy. Can I get staff to introduce this one?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. This is an information report. The city has recently purchased spatial AI vegetation analysis, which utilizes the city's high-resolution vertical imagery. The technology allows a more accurate tree canopy coverage report than it had been previously, where it was done a little more manually. The report uses Nearmap's high vegetation class, which captures the vegetation medium-high vegetation class, which captures vegetation which is greater than 2 meters in height. For accuracy, large bodies of water have been removed from the total area, and these areas will, from this point forward, be consistent in terms of looking at the tree canopy area that we're using. In the past, we've had a number of different people doing this. We've had different areas, land areas that we're looking at. This will definitely standardize it for us and allow us to have a much more accurate comparison year to year. Staff conducted the tree canopy coverage report for both 2022 and 2023, so we had something to compare to. And as you saw, the urban canopy was in 2022 was 20.2, and in 2023 was 20.93. The rural canopy in 2022 was 39.18. And in 2023, 40.37. Both of those showing growth over the years. When we looked at the electoral districts, we also saw an increase in the tree canopy percentage between 2022 and 2023 in each of those areas. When we look back at the past 5 to 10 years with ash borer, we're estimating that we've lost about 4 to 5% of the city canopy as a result of ash borer. So if you look back at some of the previous reports where we're about 21% in those, if we hadn't had that ash borer, we would more likely be up about 25%, but due to that, that's gone down. So we're still increasing over time. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I was really shocked to hear that the best district in the city has the lowest canopy cover. Kings Court Rideau is, and I'm being funny, but there's a vast discrepancy of different canopy cover from different districts, like Trillium and Kings Court, and I'm trying to figure out why there's such a discrepancy. Like Williamsville, which is also a very good district, has 21%, Trillium is 14%. These aren't geographically situated in the same parts of the city. Is there a reason why certain districts have, whether such a large inequity in the city when it comes to tree and canopy coverage?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, definitely there is, and we've tried to put some programs in place to deal with tree inequity as well. We often find that areas that have a lot more rental properties will have a lower tree canopy because often the landlords aren't interested in maintaining a tree in addition to the property. We will find that areas that have smaller properties or may not have the same economic status and have smaller properties, there just isn't a whole lot of room on those properties to plant trees. Those tend to be some of the biggest things. We did start last year the Community Trees and Trust. It was our first year, and we will do some more work with that this year. It was really to getting more trees onto properties where there was lower tree equity. So providing those trees for free to those properties to try and get more trees into those areas.
And thank you. I think you touched upon this. What can we do as a community to try to incentivize people to plant more trees, like Kings Court Rideau, Trillium? There's not a lot of similarities in these different parts of the city. Lots of residential in Councillor Hassan's district, lots of rental properties in my district. Is this just we have to get people to put it on private property? Is that really where the limitation is?
Yeah, through you, we will never be able to get to a 30% tree canopy just using public property. So getting trees onto private property will be key for us in order to get to that 30% canopy coverage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Shaves?
Thank you. I'm just looking here at figure D under the line of tree removal. And in 2023 states there were 450 trees removed. Reading that, I'm guessing that's citywide. And just thinking of my own district itself, I'm quite certain there's more than 50 trees removed in my own district, let alone the whole city. Could you share more information?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. These numbers are the numbers that our arborists from our forestry team have removed on city land. It doesn't include trees that have been removed by private contractors throughout the city or by homeowners throughout the city.
Yes, because we've lost a lot of trees due to that development, especially Woodhaven, Westbrook, and a couple industrial parks. So is there a possibility of maybe including that information, trees being lost or that? Because I know with my short term being on planning that developers need to have a tree permit for and a tree count for the number of trees that are actually on the property and then what's actually removed. That might give us a better indication how we're doing. Would that be a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Chair, definitely is something that we can do. I have had a discussion with planning, and we can provide ongoing in the tree canopy report in future years the number of trees that were removed by developers as a process, part of that process. It will miss out on trees that are removed by private homeowners that don't fall under that process. We can make sure that information is available at the end of Q2 for this particular year and then add it into the tree canopy report going forward.
Thank you. That's great news. Yes, I understand it's going to be difficult for keep track of individual homeowners because I have a dying tree in my front yard and apparently it's not on the city inventory because I inquired. But we may relocate it to the back instead of the front. Thank you.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. first question is related to, so the emerald ash borer, for example. So I live on a street that was unfortunately full of beautiful ash trees, which are now stumps or nothing. I inquired and had a tree planted by the city at no cost to me. This was before I was elected, I think. And I'm just wondering, so a lot of trees have not been replanted. So is this something that people need to request specifically, or is this something that the city doesn't do anymore and people have to use the neighborhood tree planting program? I'm just wondering how we get those replacement trees on these yards, and do people need to do something to make it happen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think a lot of times when we remove a tree, we try to plant it on the same property. That often takes a year. They'll cut down the tree in the spring, they will do the stumping in the fall, and then they will wait till the following year to plant it, often the following fall, to give that ground some time to settle. There are, however, since those trees have grown, there are a lot of utilities that have gone into the boulevards since then. And it does create some problems with us being able to plant in those areas. We always replace a tree that we take down, and we try and replace it in the same area or in a nearby area, but if we can't, we will replace it somewhere else in the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So in the instance you're describing where a tree came out from the boulevard, there's a sidewalk and there's a front lawn and a house. This is the suburbs. So would the city ask the resident if they wanted the tree planted on the front yard proper, or is that an infrastructure issue as well, or is that something someone would just need to pursue independently?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we typically haven't done that. It is something that we have started to have, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. That isn't something that we have done in the past, but it is some conversations that we have going forward, especially where we know that there's been a number of trees taken out of an area, whether it be for installation of utilities or for other reasons. So that would be something that we may look at as we have more, as we're trying to get more trees onto public property. We do need to look at some other options going forward in terms of how are we going to do that. There are some concerns about that with residents then expecting the city to take on liability for that tree that's on their private property. So there are a number of issues around that we need to consider. But again, as we look at how we're going to increase that tree canopy number, we will continue to look at programs that we can use on private property to increase that number.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, nothing's ever simple, is it? Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just wondering as well, so this report talks about tree canopy, right? And our strategic plan, council endorsed, said we want a 30% tree canopy, and it's really cool technology that you're using in that you're able to measure that change over time and it standardizes it. I think that's really excellent. Some questions have been coming up about something different. Now, it also provides tree canopy, but I think it's fair to say that trees in a park are not the same thing as trees in a forest. So we're comparing different things here. So one of the questions that's been brought to my attention is this report captures tree canopy. It does not capture forests. That's fine. Well, I mean, it does in some ways, but not in others, right? Not in identifying them specifically. So are there plans, like how are we going to learn more about the forests within the city of Kingston? What's coming up? There are plans, I believe, for a natural heritage study. I'm hoping staff can just speak to the forest piece a little bit, please.
Commissioner Joyce.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, the natural heritage study, which will encompass the forest management strategy, will address the issues in terms of those forests. I know it ties more closely with the natural heritage study because that encompasses all the aspects of the biodiversity, the animal life, the birds, all those kind of things, and how they integrate into the ecosystem. So it's a better fit there than it is on the tree canopy report. The tree canopy report is really to address what we had said a couple of years ago to council, which was instead of having a tree canopy report every 10 years, we would look to do it on an annual basis through this means and standardize how we're doing it so we can have, we can compare those apples to apples on an annual basis and see how well we're doing and look at it from the tree canopy perspective as opposed to a count of trees. I mean, we certainly heard loud and clear that the concept of a very mature tree that's got a girth of 20 inches is not going to have the same canopy and can't equate the same thing to a 2-meter high tree. So that's why we really turned towards moving and focusing on the canopy coverage in the city as opposed to a count of the trees and council, the previous council's direction about doubling the tree count. So that's where we came in. So the concept of the forest that we have within the urban areas of the city and of the rural areas of the city fits more with that natural heritage study.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. And just a follow-up question on that, because you mentioned the forest strategy. So has that been integrated into the official plan before?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, so part of what we've been doing at the city is looking at how we integrate a lot of the plans that have traditionally been done in isolation of one another, and look at how do we bring those things in concert with each other, parallel and in integrated fashion. So the official plan, the integrated mobility plan, or what used to be the transportation plan, the natural heritage study, the forest management strategy, all of those things are tied in together on how we build a city. So as staff, what we're looking at is trying to bring those in a more harmonized fashion, which would make a lot more sense in terms of how we build the city, because they all affect each other, and we need to look at that from that perspective instead of in isolation. Because in isolation, when we do it, then you get these pockets and conflicts that occur all the time.
Okay, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm hearing, we've got a new, like an updated heritage study coming because we're doing an official plan, and I'm actually looking at Councillor Osanek because what year was the other heritage study done? 2005. Okay, so it's quite old at this point. So just wondering again, when it comes to the forest piece related to canopy, the old, I'm saying old, but the old natural heritage study did identify forests, and the new natural heritage study will take a look and update that. Is that right?
Correct, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so the idea will be obviously that, the natural heritage study is quite old. It's, 2 decades. It's long overdue, as a number of things may be. So we have to look at what are some of those best practices out there. So there's a lot of work that's going to be involved with these plans, to be looking at the best practices and trying to apply a lot of those best practices and incorporate them into our plans here and bring to council.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm really, back to the tree canopy report in front of us, I'm really looking forward to seeing how we change over time. Hopefully we don't have any major invasive species again, but we'll see. Thank you.
Councillor Sun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Director Santucci, it's really upsetting me to seeing our number in our district. Kings Court and Trillium district is really low on but when I toured the district during the campaign, this is a well-established and well-developed neighborhood. It's nothing under construction. It's nothing the new construction, so we can lose the tree. What we can do to increase the canopy in our district, and how you can help us?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think the neighborhood tree program, helping to promote some of that to get trees onto private property, is definitely one. Working with Little Forests for programs similar to that. If there are other programs that people would like to see to help us move some of that forward, I'm more than willing to listen to anything that you guys are suggesting for that. The Trees and Trust program is really about building community around trees. So you get a community group that's interested in planting a number of trees in an area, and they work together to plant those and support the people that have those plantings to make sure those trees survive. So there's a number of different programs that we're looking at. And again, we need to look going forward at what other programs can we implement to get some more trees onto public property so that we can increase this tree canopy. So there are a few programs that are out there currently, and we will continue to look at building those programs going forward.
So seeing these numbers, I'm also getting worried about it because I saw a couple of years ago in my district, the tree was planting by the city. Even on my property, got one tree. We don't have it before. And I see in the entire neighborhood on Tanner Drive and Arbor Crescent, all those streets, there was a new tree planted. So if those tree was not planted, it means that we have even lower number, or we can have even lower number on the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think your question is, would your number have been lower if those trees hadn't been planted? It probably would have. However, those trees will take 5 to 10 years to establish. So we have to keep in mind, we could plant 100,000 trees this year, but they need time to grow in order to capture that canopy. A lot of the trees that have grown, I think if I encourage you, all of you to take, when you're driving home, or probably not at nighttime, but during the daytime, to look at the number of small trees that are in boulevards and stuff. We have planted a significant number of trees in the last 5 years. They are just starting to contribute to the canopy now. So you will see over the next 5 to 10 years that those will have a much bigger impact on your districts.
I see the number in 2024. You guys did a great job. 47,266 tree was not planted. Also, can we encourage the resident to take the tree? If somebody don't want to plant tree in the front lawn or the front of the house, if they have backyard, if they are willing to take the tree in the backyard. So this way we can have more number of trees. A lot of people probably hesitant to having tree at the front.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, the current programs would be if our city department was planting it, would go in the boulevard. If they couldn't plant it in the boulevard and they wanted it somewhere else on the property, we would try to sway them to use the neighborhood tree program. The neighborhood tree program, those trees are generally $150 to $200 trees, and we sell them for $20. So it's not a huge expense for them, and they are a fair-sized tree that they're receiving. That is where, again, we would look at now. But again, if there's other suggestions on other programs that you guys would like to see in the future, we are more than willing to sit down and listen and see if it is something that we can put into place or not.
Commissioner Joy?
I just would add to Director Santucci's comment. So the neighborhood tree program, we did not sell out on. So what can you do? Promote that. That's an opportunity. As she just mentioned, it's heavily discounted. It's a great value for our residents. They can plant the tree anywhere on their property in the city of Kingston. They can put them in their backyard. The other program that we got with respect to putting them in sort of along the boulevards, where we're unable to put trees right in the public right-of-way of the boulevard, that's where the Public Works Department has extended that program to permit trees to go on the private land, and we would get them planted there. All the homeowners need to do is look after them from that point. And I think I've mentioned this before, we get tremendous resistance from residents on planting trees. Everybody wants them, but very few want them right in their front yard. So I'll just say that. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. In regards to the private homeowners and removal of trees, is there not movement on a bylaw that is being developed to help slow that down?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The bylaw development will follow the natural heritage study. So that natural heritage study and the forest strategy will then set out what needs to go into the bylaw. So it is in the process, but there's a process that has to happen before we get to that.
So we're talking a bit more time then. Okay. I know in the Calvin Park area, we've lost a number of large trees, and we've had meetings about that. So I appreciate that. I would challenge my fellow councillors in your town hall meetings to invite Director Santucci. She has talked at mine in regards to the neighborhood tree planting program. And the more we can pound the pavement, the more we can make our districts aware, then hopefully we'll have a better uptake. And I'm not saying that Portsmouth District is doing that, but at least we're putting it forward for awareness, and I think that's important in doing all of our parts. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Osanik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, yeah, I find it so sad that people won't, like that we don't sell out from that $20 neighborhood tree program. But now I hear something potentially worse. So the natural heritage study, right, is supposed to coincide with our official plan update. It was supposed to be started sometime this year, but staff, like planning staff, have told me that the natural heritage study won't be finished until 2025. So us working on the private lands part of the tree bylaw won't be able to start until after the natural heritage study, because that means like it might be 2026. And we all know, I know because I've wanted this the tree bylaw extended out to private lands since before COVID, and then we had COVID hit, and we had a meeting with forestry before COVID hit, and we know it's going to be highly controversial because other cities have tried it, and you know the pushback from people that now they have to get all this permission from city staff, like it's a timing issue because we could still be in on it. And, you know, in 2026, before, like, after our term of council finishes, like, I was hoping the expansion of, you know, to private lands would occur during this council term. So I'm concerned about the timing now. Like, we can't start working on our tree bylaw until the natural heritage study's done. Is the natural heritage study going to be finished in January of 2025, or are we looking in the fall of 2025? Like, it's a timing issue now.
Commissioner Joyce?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I do understand that concern. I think, you know, our attention is really to get the natural heritage study done along with the forestry management piece in there, and work would be happening in parallel with that to support that through the bylaw changes that would encompass that. So it wouldn't be a case where, you know, we're looking at do the natural heritage study, okay, check. Now let's do the forest management strategy, check. Okay, now let's do the bylaw, check. No, those things are going to happen more in parallel with one another, so that, you know, I don't see it being 2026 with that coming through. Our intention is to accelerate a lot of this going forward. You're going to hear at an upcoming council meeting about how we think we might be able to do that with the endorsement of council. To be able to accelerate, to get in the timelines for this council, to try to get all of the stuff that we're looking to do with the official plan, the integrated mobility plan, et cetera, try to get it done within the term of this council.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, as a follow-up to that. So the natural heritage study is looking at our corridors, our wildlife corridors, our natural heritage systems that might be left or not left in Kingston. The urban forest management plan, that's the other study you're talking about, correct? The UFMP that was made in 2011 and hasn't been updated in a while. So that plan is going to be updated. And then is it both the study, the natural heritage study, and the UFMP that will then provide like the rationale, the basis for the expansion, so that when we get pushback, we're going to say, yeah, now our forest coverage is only 18% in Kingston, and we still haven't gotten, like, our tree canopy still has to expand out, la, 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 and that is why you know, we're proposing to expand the tree bylaw to now also include private lands. Is that the thinking?
So the forest management strategies will encompass both the urban forests as well as the rural areas as well. So that's one change that we had raised with council some time ago, just to be broader in that outlook. There would still be obviously continued focus on the urban piece, recognizing the importance of the urban tree canopy. But those pieces will be integrated within the natural heritage study. And we're still working on whether it's an entirely separate item to the natural heritage study and done in tandem, or whether it forms actually as part of the natural heritage study, which I'm kind of a little bit more keen on as being that, and just because of the level of integration and the importance of linking those two items I think need to happen. And then that's all tied in, of course, to the OP. But that piece with the natural heritage study and the forest management strategy would be worked on in tandem along with, okay, what changes would this mean in terms of the bylaw? Because to Councillor Amos's question about that, there is intent to look at how we can expand that bylaw. We've heard there's concerns. We understand that, so we'll be looking at that as part of that work and that scope.
Any other questions? No? Can you take the chair? I'll have a couple of questions.
I have the chair, Councillor Chinini.
Okay, so this AI thing is really interesting. So when people remove trees from their properties, does that mean like the AI will pick that up the next year it goes around?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it definitely will. It will pick up anything over that 2 meters, and if it's not there, it will only count what is actually there. So if it has been taken down, it will be removed from the percentage that's there.
Also, if trees die, like say even on private properties, does it remove them from the tree canopy when the AI counts?
Are you referring to if it dies and there's no leaf on it, or it's?
Yeah, like if it's, and then the bark's like falling off kind of thing.
Yeah, so it is looking for leaf cover. So if it is just a tree there and there is no leaf cover on it, it won't pick it up.
And do you count, say like industrial properties or businesses that plant trees? Say like Novella's planted like 30,000 trees in the city. They might not be tall enough yet, but would those be included in the tree canopy count?
So it will pick up anything that's over 2 meters, and it will pick it up for any areas within the city of Kingston.
Is it like through an aerial view?
It's through, yeah, so they fly an aerial view every spring, every winter, and every fall, I think August, and I don't know the other date. They use the August imagery, which has the best leaf cover, and they use that to pull the AI off of.
Okay, thank you very much. That's really cool.
The chair is yours.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the public questions. Are there any members of the public? Okay, yeah. So you can come over here, one of these mics on the far end.
Yep, it's going to be playing, and then if you just want to say next slide when you're ready to go, and then you'll speak into the mic there, please.
Yeah, you can just sit at one of these chairs here. And then you have 5 minutes, and no, just sit.
You can go, actually, I can go there because it's up there.
Just state your name, and then you have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name's Celeste Booth, and I'm really grateful for your time today and listening to my concerns about forest cover analysis. And I also submitted a letter, and I appreciate your time in reviewing that letter. I'm here to talk about the urgent need for update in our forest cover analysis in order to meet official plan policies that we have in place. This is important to distinguish between forest cover and urban tree canopy cover that was reported tonight. And we can't afford to wait another 12 months or so until the natural heritage study is updated, because we have important decisions facing council as early as next week about mature woodlands in our urban area that are proposed to be clear cut, such as 4085 Bath Road. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. So just some background information. Our official plan states that Kingston will take steps to achieve Environment Canada guidelines, so I will come back to what those Environment Canada guidelines, of 30% for minimum forest cover in our urban area, and also to achieve a doubling of the urban forest by 2025. So just to distinguish between tree cover and forest cover, tree canopy cover includes individually standing trees, such as street-lined trees. These are very important ecologically, and I appreciate the efforts that are being done to plant them. A forest cover is a measurement of remaining intact forest ecosystems within a watershed. While both are important, diverse forest ecosystems serve ecological functions such as maintaining biodiversity, habitat preservation, connectivity, watershed health, and climate change resiliency. Now, coming back to those Environment Canada forest cover guidelines, these are science-based guidelines that were used to guide our official plan policies, and they are a minimum threshold. The 30% is a minimum threshold that's required to maintain watershed health and habitat conservation. So, and this was documented, and it's been documented in the city report that I shared with the letter as an attachment, that these were the guidelines that what this 30% target was based on. It's not tree cover, it's not tree canopy cover that we should be comparing to this 30% guideline. It's forest cover, which is a completely different thing. So the Environment Canada guidelines defines forest cover as all tree communities, whereas trees are generally 6 meters or more in height with a canopy cover of at least 35% and more typically 60% or greater. So this is from those guidelines, and it shows that this chart shows 30% forest cover is the minimum needed to maintain watershed health, and it's actually a pretty high-risk approach. And these guidelines, I should mention, were made for the Great Lakes region specifically. A 40% forest cover is a moderate risk approach, and a 50% forest cover is a low risk approach. So this is the minimum threshold we need to maintain our forest, our ecosystem health, and our watershed health. So in 2006, the Natural Heritage Study was the last time we updated our forest cover, and it was found to be 22% in Kingston's urban area, significantly lower than the 30% Environment Canada guidelines. And so that's when we realized, council realized at that time, we needed to put some planning in place and to achieve the minimum 30% threshold. And the official plan was, the policy 2.8.2 policy was updated included at that time. And the commitment to 30% forest cover was included. So, and then in 2017, we actually added to that and committed to doubling our forest cover by 2025. This will be actually 44% forest cover by 2025, which we're far short of, as you well know, given all the development application approvals that have cleared forests in that timeline. So the 2006 Central Cataract Natural Heritage Study criteria for forests are all woodlands over 1 hectare with a minimum of 60% tree cover. And the current report tonight included all trees which were greater than 2 meters in height, including individually standing trees. As I mentioned, we haven't updated our forest cover since 2006. And so I just wonder how can we be accountable to our forest cover policy commitments if we aren't tracking this information? So I'm requesting that EITP request that staff to update the forest cover data urgently, and I'm hoping that the AI technology can be used to do this and inexpensive in a quick way, and that they use the data, they use the definitions used in the Natural Heritage Study so that we actually are comparing apples to apples. And these are science-based, this definition was based on, again, the Environment Canada science-based guidelines as a minimum threshold for watershed health.
30 seconds.
So I think it's urgent that we halt all development application approvals until we have this data, because as I mentioned, 4085, for example, is proposing to clear a 7-hectare mature woodland in our urban area. So how can we hold accountability to our official plan commitments while approving such a development application? Thank you. Thank you very much. Consideration.
Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak? Yeah, you may come up. Yep, state your name and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Marinus Sorensen, Victoria Street. I'd like to address what is considered a tree in poor condition. Certainly a tree that is in danger as a street tree is in poor condition. But a forest tree, which is hollow, is actually in its prime. It's not just in its prime because it will last for decades in that condition, but because it's actually prime habitat. A hollow tree is host to flying squirrels and red squirrels and obviously birds and bats. And in fact, in a survey of the condition of a forest as suitable for a bat habitat, it's exactly what you're looking for. So a tree in poor condition as a street tree is the opposite in a forest. It is actually the most valuable tree in the forest. Secondly, I'd like to point out that most people are not aware that lawn grass is an alien invasive species. It's actually a danger. Mowing is a danger to a forest. Mowing actually spreads weed seeds like crazy. It was noted that the canopy that overshadows water is to be subtracted, which is probably not terribly important, except that a tree over water is by definition over the riparian zone, and a riparian zone, again, is a level of preciousness far beyond even an ordinary forest floor. So it's very important to know what it is you're measuring and be as precise and as observant, perhaps, as possible when measuring what a forest is. I'd like, another curious note, that a tree at 2 meters, even if it is a tree species, I would hardly count as a tree. I might note that hogweed is often 3 meters. Does that mean we're counting hogweed? Just a curious note. I'd like to speak specifically to the Collins Creek. It's come to my attention through observation that the development is planned to be sitting on top of a very active, free-flowing karst system, which is to say that there are caverns underneath the ridge, and there are collapsed caverns both ahead of the ridge and downstream of it. I don't think this has been taken into account in the least. One of the witnesses at the last meeting pointed out that on her property the water flows out into Collins Bay throughout the year, even when the creek itself is dry. And it's very easy to see where these collapsed caverns are. I sent in a map. I don't know if it came in time for this meeting, but it's on the record, showing exactly where this collapsing cavern system is. It seems inappropriate and extreme to build a subdivision on top of a collapsing cavern system that is actively passing water, sometimes more water than the creek itself. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online?
There are no other members of the public present.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, Siri.
Siri speaking.
Yeah. Can I get staff to respond? I think there was a couple of questions in there.
I can refer, through you, Mr. Chair, I can refer to some of the comments that were made on the failing trees. We do have our arborists are continually doing assessments of trees, individual trees on roadsides, but also trees within woodlots. I know there's a woodlot behind my house recently. There has been a number of ash trees that have been removed or partially removed. So the wood is left in those woodlots in order to be used as habitat. And in many cases, the tree top was taken off, but a large section of the tree trunk remains, in which they are installing things like bat houses onto those to try and encourage more wildlife into those areas. So.
Thanks. What about, does the AI count hogweed? That's 3 meters tall?
It is a risk that we always have. I don't believe we have had any wild hogweed in the area, but it is a risk that there sometimes can be some plants that are over the 2 meters that would get picked up in that survey.
Okay. So that concludes our public portion of the meeting and our business. So now we'll move on to motions. There are no motions, there are no notices of motions, there is no other business. We had correspondence. So the date of the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And can I get a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Moved by Councillor Shays, second by Councillor Amos. All in favor? And have a good night.